Good evening. Welcome to Monday, September the 8th, 2014, regular meeting. Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
You want to do the pledge of, I'm sorry, Ms. Sanborn?
Present.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Present.
Mr. Bantes? Present. Mr. Lewis?
Present.
Mr. Waldman?
Present.
Motion carried. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Public comments. We have one, Bill Knieven.
I thought I spelled that
Concerns
phonetically.
regarding Common Core.
My name's Bill Knieven, 815 Pickett Way, and I have 2 children at Clough Pike, and I've got a stepdaughter at Glen Estee. And I want to take a minute to wade into the Common Core controversy. Partially what I want to try to do here is maybe educate some people that may not be getting all the information on it. I'll be upfront. I'm someone that currently is opposed to Common Core. I'm living it every day. I've got children in grade school. I'm seeing math that is taking very basic concepts and getting into esoteric ideas that take something that should be very simple and make it so incredibly difficult that I don't even understand what the point is. The latest one I have here is a very simple concept here of teaching place value. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, pretty simple concept, right? So this question says, write 3200s on the place value chart below. I have a chart that's got, and not everybody can see it, but it's got thousands and ones, and underneath that it's got hundreds, tens, and ones, hundreds, tens, and ones. So we're asking for 3200s. We have 200s places on this chart, but guess what? 32 doesn't go in either one of those places. The 3 goes in the ones under the 1,000, and the 2 goes under the hundreds. This is crazy. My kid, like anybody, wants to put 32. I went to coworkers who are lawyers and accountants, and they agreed this is completely insane. It makes no sense. It takes a concept I can teach a kid in 5 minutes. You write a number down, you say, here's the 1 places, here's the tens, etc. So I've become very frustrated. I've watched every math problem become, multiplication is taking circles and putting hash marks inside them, squares that equal hundreds, and lines that equals tens, and I can't even help my kid with it because this is completely foreign to me. And it's important to know that it's not just a Tea Party issue. There are people on all sides of the spectrum that are opposed to this. One of the biggest people is Diane Ratfitch. Do your homework on her. She's not a Tea Partier, okay? She's somebody that is an educational policy analyst. She works at New York's University of Steinhart School of Culture, Education, and Human Development, and she was U.S. Assistant Secretary of Education for several years. And I ask everybody to look up a great speech she gave called Everything You Need to Know About Common Core. I found this on the Washington Post website, and I'm going to hit a couple of relevant points. There is no field testing of Common Core. She says here, when it became clear that there would be no field testing, I decided I could not support the standards. I objected to the lack of any democratic participation in their development, and I objected to the absence of any process for revising them. And that's important. There is no process of revising them. As she says, another problem presented by Common Core is that there is no one in charge of fixing them. If the original writing committee no longer exists and no organization or agency has the authority to revise the standards, the Common Core standards might as well be written in stone. So if there's any problems, you're dealing with a bureaucracy that doesn't even exist anymore to try and fix the problem. Then we get to, is there expertise involved? According to Ratfitch, again, she was involved in No Child Left Behind. This is not a rightist. This is a radical leftist pro-education person. Early childhood educators are nearly unanimous in saying that no one who wrote the standards had any expertise in education of very young children. And yet proponents of the Common Core insist that children as young as 5 or 7 should be on track to be college and career ready, even though children this age are not likely to think about college, and most think of careers as cowboys, astronauts, or firefighters. Move on. Again, it's a very long speech. I'm just trying to hit some relevant points. This is a national curriculum. That's exactly what it is. In its present climate, again, this is Dr. Ratfitch, in the present climate, the Common Core standards and testing will become the driving force behind the creation of a test-based meritocracy. The Common Core tests are a linchpin of the federal effort to commit K-12 education to the new world of big data. The tests are the necessary ingredient to standardize teaching, curriculum, instruction, and schooling. Move on to another person. Marina Ratner, renowned professor emeritus of mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley, a right-wing hotbed. She says she hardly found any academic mathematicians who could assert that the Common Core
30
standard...
seconds, Mr. Knievel.
Okay, I'll try it. I asked for just a couple more minutes. I'm coming home. Standards were better than California's pre-2010 standards. And she talks about reviewing her grandson's math homework, and assessments on fractions require drawing pictures of 6 divided by 8, 4 divided by 2/7, and 8 divided by 0.4, and so forth. Noting that with Common Core, she says, who would draw a picture to divide 2/3 by 3/4? I asked the same question, and I'll finish with this. This is from Larry Allen Early, Associate Director of Curriculum Assessment with the Ohio Department of Education. I asked him specifically about the math test. If a student were to use a math method that is legitimate, but is not the Common Core math method, on a state test and get the right answer, would they get the answer correct? His answer is, they may get fewer points than they can achieve. It's more than just an answer. So let me repeat that. Correct methodology, always been used, get the right answer. The answer is still not considered correct. This is how we're going to develop forward-thinking students that are compete. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Cropper, approval of minutes.
You have in your excuse me, you have in your packet tonight the minutes from the August 18th, our last regular scheduled meeting. I respectfully request that you approve those as presented.
You've heard the recommendation from Mrs. Cropper. Do we have a motion?
Move as issued.
And a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mr. Banches? Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman? Yes.
Motion carried. Treasurer's business, donations.
In your packet, you have one donation this evening from Willowville. Actually, it was 3 donations of school supplies. They received school supplies from the Cherry Grove United Methodist Church. Also, 2 former students donated school supplies, M. Brown and H. Dyer. And Carl and Millie Bachman, a couple of our Willowville residents, also donated school supplies to our Willowville students. As Ohio law requires, I respectfully request that you approve those donations as presented.
You've heard the recommendation from Mrs. Cropper. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Banches?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Motion carried. The Ohio Department of Education, Mr. Horton, Mrs. Cropper.
Yeah, the next item on the agenda is I'm proud to introduce Mr. Dean Horton, who's the area coordinator from the Ohio Department of Education, and he is here to share some exciting news with us this evening.
About 2 years ago, I think it was, I first came and did a financial analysis, and then as things kind of played out and we saw the negative financial outlook that we were seeing with the district, I was appointed as the monitor when the district was placed into fiscal caution. In that role, I've been visiting on a monthly basis, reviewing documents, talking with staff, primarily with the treasurer, and have reviewed a lot of what has been going on, have had a lot of questions, I've made some suggestions, and I want to point out that my experience has been very, very positive. My acceptance here has been great, the cooperation has been excellent, and I particularly want to commend both the superintendent and the treasurer, not for what they've done with me, but for the evidence I've seen of how they work together. And I say this in a very pointed manner because, unfortunately, I've spent time in a lot of school districts over the last 58 years, and I've seen too many situations where that's not the case. Not so long ago, I had a treasurer tell me that, I said, this is something, you really need to kind of get reviewed with the superintendent. And she said, well, I've been trying to get an appointment with him. I said, you're kidding me. And no, she wasn't kidding at all. She had to get an appointment, and it was going to be some time off. You can't just walk in. No, can't do that. So I don't think that's the way things are operating here, and I think that's a plus for you. There have been many changes in your fiscal status, some very serious changes in expenditure levels, and some fortunate things in terms of revenue. It has come through with a little higher level than what we had originally anticipated. And when we put these things together, it's changed the picture entirely. Instead of having a negative kind of outlook here over through the 5-year forecast, most recently that forecast is showing black balances as we go forward. I did a 2-year analysis myself, came out with projecting a black balance for this year, fiscal year 15, and also for fiscal year 16. That's what's required to get you out of fiscal caution. So with that in mind, it's my pleasant duty to tell you that you have officially been released from the category of fiscal caution. You're no longer in fiscal oversight. I'll no longer be in here monitoring. I would suggest that's worth applauding. So I want to congratulate everybody who's a party to it, and I want to give to you this letter from Brian Jones, Executive Director of the Office of School Finance with Ohio Department of Education, officially declaring the fact that fiscal caution as a situation here has ended. So congratulations and good luck as you go forward.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Sanborn, I also
Thank you.
want to give my thanks to Mr. Horton for his words of wisdom and his encouragement over the last couple years. He brought to us years and years of experience. He was a former superintendent in another life, so he had been through a lot of the challenges that we faced, and of course through his work with ODE, he'd seen many school districts facing these same challenges and had many words of encouragement and ways to face what we were facing there. So we do appreciate that.
Good. And the most important thing here is it's kind of the old military thing is well done. I'm home.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cropper, I'd like to make mention that while I think a lot of this is contributed towards the turn of finances, the revenue coming into the district, I think that there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to Dr. Klein for having a vision for our district, being a fresh face, seeing things every day. Kind of you're able to overlook some things. With him coming in, I think that you've done a great job at turning this district around. Thank you for all of your efforts.
What I've learned in pretty short order around here is that it truly takes a team effort. And we are fortunate to have great people who care very deeply about our kids and want to see this district in a healthy state as we move forward. So I think we've turned the corner in a lot of ways, but I think we'd all agree there's so much to be done, and it's time to dig in and start focusing on what's next. So thank you, and thanks to everybody for their contribution.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, it was a big job to turn it around from a huge negative to in the black. And as you just said, Mrs. Brinkman, there are a lot of people that's due to their effort. That, you know, in the past boards in the decade I've been here, when we first started making cuts, the district already spent 7% less than the average school district in the state of Ohio. And the past boards, of which you were part of, had to face some very difficult decisions, because when we're already spending less, you're not cutting fat, you're cutting muscle, you're cutting bone, you're cutting programs that negatively impact students. And those cuts have led us to where we are today, where we spend 21% less than the average school district in the state of Ohio. And, you know, too, we'd be amiss if we didn't mention again the concessions that our staff has made. You know, they, throughout the region here, they're certainly in the bottom in terms of average pay, and they themselves have given up 3 years of increases, frozen their steps. shouldered more of the health insurance premium. And that's all the while with our certificated staff are faced with a 1% increase in their employee share of the retirement. So for the 3 years they've got a raise, our staff's taken home a negative in their net pay.
All the while doing more because we have fewer teachers, their class sizes are
Yes.
bigger, they're doing more to make sure that our kids are well educated.
Yeah, so a lot
More
of
time in the
people,
day, too.
yeah,
Longer school days.
Yep.
a lot of people have come together. It's taken the whole team, as you said, to turn this thing around. And hopefully our revenues will continue to look up. And as Mr. Horton would say in his report, a lot of our problem was a revenue problem. It wasn't an expenditure problem in looking at our stats. So hopefully with the economy turning around, we've got a brighter future ahead of us.
Very good. Any other treasurer's comments you would like to make, Mrs. Cropper?
No, I think I'll end on the positive note that we're out of fiscal caution.
All right, very good, thank you.
Note to end on.
Yes, it
Superintendent's
is.
business, Matt Van Sant from the Claremont County Chamber of Commerce. Great Oaks update, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce to everybody Mr. Van Zant. As the board knows, he has graciously stepped up to serve as West Claremont's representative on the Great Oaks Board. And I know that he has a guest with him tonight, so he's going to give us a little bit of an update and an
my
introduction.
guest up
to
in a
boot.
minute?
Absolutely.
But it's been 4 months now since I last reported to the board. I think I was back in April of this year. I started my term in January, and we've had a busy summer. It's pretty interesting the amount of detail that is processed through a school system. And so now in my 8th month, I look forward to hitting December and maybe watching this cycle again for another school year. But I thought I'd go real quickly through a few months and then introduce Harry Snyder, who's with me tonight. So back in May, it's the end of the school year, and we're getting into graduations, and each year I get to go to the graduation of the students from Live Oaks. So we head out to, I think it is Springdale, and spend an evening watching students. I have the opportunity to give out scholarships, and it's fun to see the parents and all the smiles and other things that go on. It was a very good May. It's a time of year when we look at enrollment, textbooks, and other types of things. Then in June, we get into curriculum review. So as I mentioned last time, I'm on the Education Program Design and Evaluation Committee. So in June, I had the chance to visit with a couple of the teachers, particularly in masonry and then construction, and question them and hear them present what they're doing in their programs. I think something that's particularly, I guess, satisfying is to hear them answer the question, how do you keep up with the industry? And the credentials of these teachers in the advisory committees that they develop are pretty remarkable, and they're doing really good work. We also, in June, looked at something called the Ohio Graduation Test, OGT, and I've got a little thing I wanted to read here to you. If I get my notes in order. Here's a report. It says, the class of 2014 started in October 2012 with 45% of our students in need of assistance to pass one or more parts of the Ohio graduation test. By the end of June 2014, 99.8% of the class had passed reading, 99.3% passed math, 99.6%, 98.4%, and so on and so forth. So some really good work going on in the district and in the traditional schools. July was a time of year when we began to look at placement, where the student's going to be going this fall. We spent a little bit of time looking at some of the success of the dual credit program. So over a period of time now with Hocking College, we have accumulated through the Great Oaks system 19,436 college credits while these students are in the career system. So really good results there. Then in August, just last month, we spent some time on enrollment. We also did some work with accreditation. I know that goes on here as well. But Great Oaks Adult Workforce Education Program was reaccredited for 3 years. So as an education program design and evaluation team member, we got the report on that. That's some good news. It's also the time of year, that is in August, when we look at program course offerings, name changes, and so on. And I wanted to just take a minute to report out to this board some of the additional programs and services I know being brought to this district, and the numbers are pretty remarkable. PLTW Engineering coming to Amelia this year. semester one and maybe just semester one. There's a program called Gateway to Technology coming to Amelia Middle School, 766, is that students, probably, Harry? Out of 1,500 in the total group. Glen Estee had another 200. So we're really stepping up. In biomedical, Glen Estee, 133 students out of 329 across the system. I could read on, but I'm really proud to be representing the district and go to these meetings with 35 other representatives of districts, and West Claremont is doing very, very well. I want to also mention that back in May, we also went through the process of hiring a new superintendent. So Robin White retired and went through a rather vigorous process of interviewing superintendents, and so it's my pleasure to introduce Harry Snyder. Harry is the new superintendent of Great Oaks. I think we call you president and CEO. So I just wanted to introduce Harry to the board.
Glad to see you all here. Glad to work with you. Keith's been excellent. We spent a couple of nights over at Miami University with high aims, and so we look forward to helping all of our kids succeed. Absolutely. So, thanks.
Finally, we are getting ready to release our 2015 membership directory at the Chamber of Commerce. So these are not on the streets yet, but I wanted to approach the board and give you copies, particularly because on the front page of this particular edition of our directory, we talk about the agenda for the future. And lifelong learning is a big part of this program coming up. We're working closely with many of our districts with the Work Readiness Initiative. We're grateful for your support. We're going to have a big celebration Thursday night of good deeds, good teaching. We're really proud to be partners with you here at the Chamber of Commerce. So,
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
thanks, man. I should have counted before I left the office.
Mr. Wall.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, want to thank Mr. Van Zandt for his service to the West Claremont School District as our representative of Great Oaks. And I believe Harry is a West Claremont resident. Is that correct? Batavia. All right. Well, Claremont County. Close. Close. So we're excited about his leadership at Great Oaks. He's, from everything I can tell, things are going splendidly, and he's out making a lot of connections and trying to work on how we get satellite school districts better connected with the opportunities at Great Oaks. As you can tell from Mr. Van Zandt, we've got a lot of our students that are taking advantage of those opportunities. So we want to continue that and make sure that our kids have what they need to be prepared to go do whatever they choose to do after they graduate from high school. So thank you again, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Klein, District Area Focus.
Yeah, I wanted to take a few minutes tonight to talk about where we're headed as far as instructional staff is concerned. Over the course of the summer, I met with the administrative team, and we talked about where do we feel we need to be going as far as academics are concerned, as far as other factors that are part of our school life. And some of you will remember this diagram that we put up now a year and a half ago. The administrative team really felt that those four categories still were very pertinent to what we do today. Safe and secure and inviting schools, obviously a priority. 21st century teaching and learning, communication skills, and financial stability. So I want to take just a moment to talk about the things that are going on in each one of those areas. And as we move forward, either tonight or in subsequent meetings, certainly interested in the board's feedback and input on anything that needs to be added or deleted from these items. Under safe, secure, and inviting schools, we've already talked this year about ALICE, implementing the ALICE training. We had, from what the staff has reported back to me, probably the best, most powerful professional development they've experienced in a long time. And Mr. Dyer's committee, Mr. Walker was a part of that. Several other administrators did an outstanding job putting together a pretty real-life kind of scenario for our staff to have to problem solve through and work through, and they did an outstanding job with that. One of the other things that we're looking at with safe, secure, and inviting schools is standardizing our safety plans across the district. We have to submit those to the state after the first of the year, and Mr. Dyer's group is working diligently on that as well. As you know, we've made some significant upgrades to entrances and putting cameras and buzz-in systems. We're going to continue to look at how we can upgrade our buildings to make sure that they're as safe as possible. And we'd like to, as we move forward, and I've talked with a couple of you about this, continue to look at ways that we can increase access to our buildings, particularly our elementary schools, for the community during evening hours. And we're starting to work on that as we move forward. That gets back to the inviting piece. I've always believed that these are the community schools. They're not ours. They're not the board's. They're not mine. These are our community schools. And I'd love to see them open 24/7 for folks to use. That's why they're there. On our first teacher work day, or actually the second teacher work day when we had everyone together, what I shared with the staff at that point was that we need to, in 2014-15, focus on teaching and learning. That's our core mission. That's why we're here. And we've got to find ways to do the best possible job we can for our young people in the classroom. So we've been talking about a variety of things. Mr. Van Zandt just spoke about work readiness and that initiative that's being directed by the chamber. We're in the process of getting involved with that in a more in-depth manner. I've been working with Mr. Van Zandt and Mr. Maloff, who's our representative for the work readiness group, to set up a business advisory committee, which we will hopefully have up and running in October. Also want to bring parents and teachers into the mix and talk with them about what kinds of skills do our young people need as they go out into the real world. And some of that I think we take for granted. Obviously, they need good content mastery. They need to know the nuts and bolts and the reading, writing, arithmetic. But they also need to learn how to collaborate. They need to learn how to be creative thinkers and critical thinkers and be problem solvers, be good citizens, those types of things. So I'm hopeful with this business advisory group, as well as groups of parents and staff, we'll be able to define what those 21st century skills are and then find very intentional ways of embedding that in what we do in our classrooms on a daily basis. If we're working with a young person from grade K through 12 on here's how you collaborate when you're put into groups to come up with or solve a problem or to come up with a creative solution, by the time they leave at the end of 12th grade, they should have a pretty good handle on that. And those are skills that are transferable regardless of whether they go to work or they go straight into college and then into a career after that. So those are skills that we need to look at and see how we're going to infuse those in what we're doing on a daily basis. High-impact instructional strategies. There's research out there that tells us that certain strategies have the highest impact in classrooms, and we want to make sure that we're working with our staff to utilize those as frequently as possible as we're working with our youngsters. We may have to come back to this board mid-year and talk about graduation requirements. Part of what we're going to be reviewing, and we've talked with the secondary administrators about this, is sitting down and looking at our graduation requirements and do they set kids up for success once they've graduated. We know the state has a list. We need to make sure that we've got the right components in there. Are we requiring a personal finance or a financial literacy class of all students, not just ones that sign up? Are we doing that as a standalone, or are we doing that embedded in other coursework, which is kind of what we're doing right now. We've got to do a better job with secondary electives. Right now, we don't have enough classes for our kids to take, and some of them are taking classes multiple times, the same class multiple times, because there's nothing else for them to take. And that, quite honestly, was a result of us having to make reductions as we went through the years. So we're working with secondary administrators. We're going to get involved with all of our secondary students using Ohio Means Jobs. It's a new online system, career education system, where our students can go in and do interest inventories, look at how much money different careers make, do budgeting, all kinds of things. So we're working right now with those folks to see how we can infuse that in what's going on in our classrooms. In addition to that, I don't think we just sit in a room and decide what electives we're going to bring to kids. I think we need to talk to kids. So we hope to use Ohio Means Jobs as a way to kind of pull together their interests, look at those in addition to what are the job forecasts telling us for the future. When these kids are out in the real world, what kind of jobs are going to be in need? And so I think looking at those pieces of data, then we can better determine what kind of programming we need to add for our students. And I challenged our secondary principals pretty directly last week and said that we need to have that work done by the end of 2014, because if we're going to do anything different next school year, the preliminary work has to be done before the holiday break, so that when we get back, we start registering kids for the next school year. So they're on a tight timeline. we're going to keep pushing forward and hopefully we'll have land in a better spot. Our curriculum folks are looking at how do we do more with gifted education. We don't have a lot of resources for that, but they're looking at opportunities like Super Saturday programs where kids can come in and spend some time on Saturday mornings to get some enrichment. Also looking at extending our grade and subject area acceleration for individual kids who are in that category. I hear all the time International Baccalaureate and Advanced Placement are important programs in our school district, and I believe that too. We've got to make sure that we're doing a better job with both of those programs, and that means that we've got to invest in making sure that our teachers are well trained and we have the right teachers in those classrooms. So we're going to be focusing on that as well. Curriculum, and I've got curriculum with a question mark. Mr. Knieven spoke to Common Core. We've had conversations about Common Core, and Columbus is all over the place right now. And so curriculum, that piece is definitely on the radar, but we've got to get some definitive answers from Columbus about where we go before we just dive off into something new after spending a lot of resources on getting to where we are today. And obviously strengthening program across the board to increase opportunities for kids. And that's really where we're going to be focusing this year on teaching and learning. I have to say, when I presented that to the staff at that opening meeting, the concept of focusing on teaching and learning, which is our core business, received a robust round of applause. That's why they're here, that's why we're here, and that needs to be our primary focus as we move forward. Let's slip on to communication real quick. We are working right now on a quality profile for the district. That document will go out to all of our parents and out into the community. And it really highlights a lot of the other things that go on in our school district that are very positive, but aren't reflected on the state report card. State report card is driven primarily by test results, and there's a place for that. But districts across the nation do a whole lot more than just give tests. And so there are reasons that we ought to be celebrating. We have a lot of things actually to celebrate as far as beyond that state report card. So we'll be getting that document out here soon to the community. Working on an app for West Claremont. We found that the majority of our folks, when they're accessing district information electronically, are doing so from telephones. And so we're in the process of developing that for easier communication. Continue with community outreach, district parent council, something I started last year. Our first meeting with that group is this Wednesday. We've started to do focus groups. I've met a couple of times with different realtor offices and talk with them about what's going on in West Claremont so that they know what's going on. And we put some information together to share with them so that they have actual information as opposed to what might be out there rumor-wise. And then the last piece on communication is development of the district master plan, which is something we'll be engaged in as we move through that fall. And that's going to be a huge outreach. We're going to need to have some focus groups and some individuals, parents, community members involved in that as we look at the district master plan around facilities. The last piece is financial stability. And Mr. Horton alleviated some of the stress and the pressure under that particular item. But as I've said before, there's still much that we need to do. And honestly, as we look at, and Mrs. Cropper and I have talked about looking at that financial piece, there are really two major areas we need to delve into as we move forward into 14-15. One is transportation. We've got to solve the problem that is a lack of transportation in this district. And how that plays itself out district-wide is dramatic and problematic. We've got kids who can't get to school because they don't have a ride. We can't teach them if they don't get to school. I continue to be worried about wintertime and what the other issues that brings. So we need to, as a board, quite honestly, I would like for that to be one of our areas of focus, is getting that transportation bug solved so that we can move on. The other piece that's going to be big for this board this coming year, I think, is going to be facilities, and that gets back to the district master plan. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions about what we do with buildings and what does our configuration look like. Where do we put funds to help upgrade buildings? As you know, we've had OSFC, the Ohio School Facilities Commission, was in the springtime and gave us a preliminary report on the status of all those buildings. They came in and did a complete inspection, did enrollment projections, did a lot of work around that. And as I said, back in the spring, they put us off to do a district master plan until this fall. And so we will be entering into that master planning. Doesn't mean we're going to do anything as far as building or whatever, but we have to get into that master planning process so that we can make some quality decisions based on data around how we're structured as we move forward. I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to keep up with facilities through these financially difficult times. But there are some things that are to the point where they're going to be really tough to bring back up to speed or bring up to snuff. So that is really going to need to be a major focus for what we're doing as we move forward this year as well. So like I said, I wanted to go back through this and kind of give you an idea of what I've shared with the district staff and what we're working on as we move into this new school year. As I said, I'm certainly open for board input, and I would invite board input and dialogue, whether it's tonight or down the road, on those particular areas that we plan to focus on as we move forward in 14-15. So that's what I have as far as where we're headed from the inside of the organization.
Dr. Klein, bus routes?
Before we go on with that, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry.
That's all right. I need to take a drink here real quick.
Back to Mr. Knieven's point, I have heard several parents mention about that math program and the Common Core. And several students have missed a couple of days of school already this year, and they're trying to keep up with their children and help supplement what they're getting from the classroom. But the classroom's moving on, and they've not got the last concept, and parents are having a hard time teaching that. Is there a website, is there some place where these parents can go to get information that can support and supplement what the teacher's doing?
Well, I think there are a lot of resources out there, and so obviously the primary resource would be communication directly between teacher and parent. There are some other resources out there that I think that we can certainly get out to folks so that they can take a look at it as well. In my former district, we did evening events, and I know some of our buildings do the same, where they invite parents in and talk through how they're doing different math strategies, et cetera.
And that's good long-term, but when you have a child that comes home from school
Immediately,
and they have homework that's now due tomorrow or the next day, and they need help tonight, the teachers are committed to being at home. They're not available to have that conversation. So there has to be a source or something for those parents to go to help keep their child up.
Yep. Well, and I'm sure the elementary folks know exactly where those websites are, et cetera. We'll communicate that and see what we can get out to parents.
That's perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Bus routes, Dr. Klein?
Annually, we need to approve bus routes by law, the regular education bus routes for the 14 and 15 school year. As Mr. Dyer would say, and he's got the bus routes here in a binder if you'd like to review those. It's pretty extensive. Stop by stop by stop. These are subject, and they actually, since that was printed probably last week sometime, have probably changed 50 times. And so we have to, by law, approve the routes, knowing that they're going to be modified as different situations come up, and we need to make adjustments to those routes. So, Mr. Dyer, did I miss anything with that very brief explanation? I think we did okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So I would respectfully request that the board approve the bus routes as presented in our binder for this school year.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Klein. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Do we know,
I'm sorry.
did we change anything this year as far as consolidating stops? Or are we still picking up like we did previous years?
I would say just about everything gets changed every year. We change them daily. As you know, we contract with Peterman Bus Service to do that, transportation service. But I can tell you on a regular basis, we change them as far as going to more cluster versus stops at homes. I don't know that we've changed a lot of that. We're still doing a lot of the pickups at the outside of 2 miles at the home. Because quite honestly, when you get outside of the 2 mile, a lot of it's pretty rural. And so I don't know that we've changed a lot with that, but the bus stops change all the time. The way we run the routes change all the time to try to get them more efficient and to operate them the best we can, as short as we can. That changes, but as far as clustering, I don't think we've made any much change.
You use a computer program to schedule the bus routes?
Yes, they use a program called Versatran
Okay.
to schedule those, and they put in all the data, the number of routes, number of schools. We do transport to around 33 schools and we've got a little over 200 routes that we run on a daily basis. And so it's a pretty comprehensive process.
Ed, can you speak to whether we have added any routes this year based on numbers?
We have not added any regular routes. We have added the middays, as you're well aware. The middays were added this year, which last year we were every other day, all day, so we didn't add midday routes, but we did add the midday routes.
Okay.
And those numbers for those routes are the same as we had talked about previously when we talked about adding those. We haven't added anything in additional to that.
All right.
But so far, we've been able to hold with the same number of buses. We have 42 buses, and we've been able to hold with that.
Okay.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Banches?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. Motion carried. Clough Pike Elementary overnight field trip request. Dr. Klein?
Yeah, this is the field trip request for Camp Kern, or Camp Campbellgard, I'm sorry. Camp Campbellgard, this traditional trip that our fifth graders take throughout the district. It's primarily focused on the economics around slave trade and bartering, as well as some science organism studies in ecosystems. The students will miss a few days of school, but from what I understand from everything that folks have come back and said after attending this camp, they took a lot out of having that experience as a fifth grade class. And again, we see these frequently throughout the year. A lot of our fifth grades go to Camp Campbellgard for that experience. So that being said, I'd like to respectfully request the board approve the Camp Campbellgard overnight field trip for Clough Elementary as presented.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Klein. Do we have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Motion, second. Discussion?
This is just for Clough Pike Elementary.
Yeah, we do the overnight field trip request by building. So I just haven't received the ones from, and they go pretty much throughout the year. So we'll approve them as they arrive on my desk.
So throughout the year, all the fifth graders in the district will
Typically, yes.
eventually go?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And we do, and I know Mr. Lewis had a question today about costs. Most of our schools do some fundraising around that, so kids have an opportunity to earn that money. But PTOs, and we're very fortunate to have great PTOs, PTA organizations, do provide some underwriting of some of those costs for kids who maybe don't have that money to attend. From talking to Mr. Thacker, thank you. Mr. Thacker today, he doesn't remember a single kid not being able to go because of the money situation.
Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Banches?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Motion carried. Dr. Klein, personnel?
Yeah, we have a personnel agenda tonight, just a handful of resignations. Also a certified personnel hire as a special education tutor. Supplemental contracts for internal folks, Saturday school monitors. We already had some of those. And study tables, I had that question today. Study tables we run after school at our secondary buildings for tutoring and additional academic support. We don't have all those people every day. It's a rotational basis so that there's someone there to help with kids with questions that they have academically. We do have some additional supplementals, weight room supervisor, athletic contest worker, et cetera. Classified exempt contract for a campus coordinator due to a resignation. Parapro aides, we have a few of those that we're filling, and those are all usually the last positions that get filled on an annual basis. Have a good selection of school volunteers. We appreciate folks stepping up and helping us in our buildings. A couple of substitutes for classified personnel positions, and 2 stipend approvals. Those were for curriculum work that the board approved those stipends, giving those stipends as we move forward. With that being said, I'd like to respectfully request that the board approve the personnel agenda as presented.
You have heard the recommendation from Dr. Klein. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? I'll second. Discussion?
Quick question, study tables.
Sure.
Do the people that man those tables have specialties? Like somebody's good at English, somebody's good at
They do. I think the
science?
majority of them, we try to focus on the areas where we know kids are going to probably struggle more than not. Math pretty heavily, but also the other subject areas as well. And I believe they set those out so that we know that like Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's going to be somebody there for math, or, try to schedule that and announce it to the kids.
These are all teachers.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Banches?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Motion carried. Dr. Klein, superintendent's comments?
I just have two quick ones for this evening. The first has to do with one of my all-time favorite topics as a school person, dress code. I think that is the bane of the existence of a secondary administrator. I spent my time in the barrel for years working on that, and I have to say that I think our secondary principals are doing an outstanding job of holding our young people to a standard that's appropriate for school. I hear them saying all the time, at this point, this is your job. We need to come in with a apparel that matches what we're trying to do. And so I applaud them for their efforts. And that, believe me, from experience, that is not a fun position to have to take or enforce on a daily basis. But I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback from parents in the community, and I do appreciate their efforts in that regard. There was a little bit of a controversy around cheerleading uniforms when we cracked down on dress code. We have since made a slight modification to the outline of the dress code in the code of conduct to allow the principals the discretion to allow students to wear spirit wear on occasion as they see fit, and the principals are working through that appropriately. Also want to mention that we are in the process, under their leadership, will be pulling together a group of parents, community members, teachers, students to talk and review the dress code as it stands right now and make any recommendations for modifications moving forward. So I see us doing that over the course of the next month or so, and then I can update the board once we hear back from that work group. So just wanted to mention that. Also wanted to mention art, music, and PE. I got a short story to tell. I was one of the great parts of being superintendent is I get to go around to all the buildings and see what's going on with kids. And quite honestly, that is so much better than sitting in my office doing paperwork. And so I was out the first week of school, and I made a point of getting to the two elementaries who were having art, music, and PE that week. And I ran into a group of, I think it was 4th or 5th graders, and they were coming out of gym, and they were all hot and sweaty, which I thought was great. That means they were moving, and they couldn't help themselves but tell me how excited they were about getting to do PE and having some art and some music in their day. And they were fired up, and I think they said, well, tomorrow we get to go to, whatever. It was fun to watch them. It was fun to see that excitement and enthusiasm in their face. And I'm really excited and appreciate the fact that we've got some of those things back in our buildings. That being said, we are finishing up the first full rotation. As you know, we have a team of folks that are moving through 4 buildings. We're finishing up that first rotation, and I've asked that the elementary principals, as well as curriculum folks, and the art, music, and PE teachers sit down and reevaluate how that first rotation went. I think we'll see some modifications in the schedule as far as, are we doing all of them on one day, or how does that all play out in the different buildings? With a little bit of research, we found out that there were different things going on in different buildings, and so we need to bring that, make it more common, and work on that. So they're going to meet this week, and now that they've been through all the buildings, and see what works and what doesn't, and work on modifying schedules so that it works a little bit better as we move into the future. So I just wanted to share the excitement level that I saw with kids. It was great to see them fired up about it. We had a little bit more finger paint on stuff, but that's okay. We'll get that cleaned up, and we'll move on to the next thing. So all is coming along with that well. We'll go back and evaluate and tweak, but we're glad that it's back in our schools.
Well, since you've brought it up,
Sure.
I need to just remind you
Yep.
and make mention to everybody on the board that I've been receiving a lot of negative comments about the scheduling, specifically about the specials. And while the community and the parents are appreciative that we've brought it back, it's not in a desirable schedule. And so we've had conversation, and you are looking at it specifically.
Yep.
So those parents out there that are unhappy, just know that we are addressing it.
Well, and this is quite honestly, I'm sorry,
That's all right, no, in trying to fix it.
quite honestly, a new approach, something we've not done, and it's not really done like this in many places. It was an opportunity for us to bring back some, and certainly I would love to come back to the board and say I need 6 more, because that would make life a lot easier. That being said, we can do what we can do, and that's why I've asked that group of folks, administrators and teachers, to get together and see what makes the most sense, using everything that we've learned over the first 4 weeks of school. And I think they'll be able to come up with a schedule that works a little bit better, hopefully, for everyone.
I'm not looking forward to the day that my son has art, music, and PE all on the same day. I think that's going to be overkill, and he's going to be bouncing off the walls as are the other kids, and then be very disappointed having to wait another month
Yep.
for a special.
Well, and that's what we're working through right now.
Yeah, good.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Public comment. Board business. Do we have any nominations for the office of Vice President of the Board?
Yes. As Judge Schreiber gave us a new board member, as he best determined was a consensus builder, I would like to nominate Mr. Banshees to be the new vice president.
Do we have a second? I second that. Are there any other nominations for the office of Vice President?
I'll nominate Tammy Brinkman.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the office of Vice President? Okay. We have to do one at a time, Mrs. Cropper?
No, I'll call roll, and if you could just say who you're voting for.
Okay.
So before we do that, can we get some perspective from both of you in terms of how you feel about being nominated and what your thoughts are on that?
You want to go first?
I think that currently we lack leadership on this board, and I'd love to serve in that role, to be a good support person for our president. And I think I would do an excellent job representing us and making sure that we move this district forward together as a team, and look forward to serving in that role.
First off, I'm honored by the nomination. Again, I've seen similar things, the leadership vacuum on the board. We need consensus. This is going to be a short-term appointment because come January or thereabouts, we'll reestablish board president, vice president. As I've told each of you when you've called me, I will serve, but I don't want to be creating hard feelings one way or another either. So I know I've been asked by a couple of board members to do it. I've had others say, you know, they can go either way. My position, so long as we move forward as a unified board, that's what's important. As far as vice chairman, really, vice chairman only serves in the absence of the chairman, which, from what I've seen of Tina's voting in president's record, she's not missed. So I don't see the vice chairman doing much of anything at this point. So for that perspective, I'd gladly do it.
Welcome to the board.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Banshees?
Ms. Sanborn?
Mr. Banshees?
Mr. Waldman?
Mr. Banshees.
Mr. Banshees?
Myself, I guess.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Mr. Banshee.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carried. Congratulations, Mr. Banshees.
Or condolences, whichever is more appropriate.
Now you get to be sworn in.
Oh, and I can,
Mr. Banshees, if you could stand, please, and take the Vice President oath of office. Do you swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully, to the best of your abilities, perform the duties of the Vice President of the Board of Education of the West Claremont Local School District, Claremont County, Ohio? So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, Mr. Banshees.
Discussion of legal counsel. Do we want to discuss legal counsel this evening?
Oh, I do.
Sure, why not?
I think that we brought it up several months ago, that it was brought up that we need to change. We vetted the process, and it was determined that the law firm that we're currently using is the best that's out there available to us. It's cost effective. And I think we should remain steady the course.
I'll make a motion that we continue to work with Bricker and Eckler as the district's legal counsel.
Second.
I could change it.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I would like to change. We did not agree that they're doing the best job. From the meetings we had with them, they didn't really tell us a whole lot, other than you know us, so I don't need to tell you anything. And I think if we want to change direction, we need to find a law firm that's not going to be same old, which is what we currently have. They're embedded in the system. And I think that the Finney law firm, although not as deep, they're definitely staffed with some very highly qualified individuals on that team that will help us move in a different direction. I would like to, and I think we should change direction. I would rather have Mr. Finney and his team on my side than across the table from me, which is what they've done mostly in the past. They've been against the school boards, against all government bodies, and been very successful at that. And I would nominate Chris Finney and company as a replacement law firm.
I think we already have a motion
We
on the
have
floor.
we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Waldman to maintain Brickler and Eckler as our law firm. Did we have a second on that?
We do.
Mr.
John
Banshees, sorry.
Banshees.
Thank you.
I've had the opportunity to review both proposals. In reviewing them, it's quite evident that Bricker and Eckler have vast experience in school law. They represent some 200-plus school districts throughout Ohio. That's roughly a third of the school districts in Ohio. That clearly means that they are well-versed in school law, policy, procedure, negotiations, et cetera. Looking at the Finney proposal, it's really a three-way consortium of lawyers, three law firms collectively getting together. That kind of raised a red flag first off in my mind that I have three law firms, and which one am I going to talk to, and which one I talk to first will bill me, and if I have to get referred to a second one, I'll get billed again, and so on and so forth. If I look at the individual law firms, Finney's a litigation firm specializing most recently in tax law, tax revision, tax appeals. Well, folks, we're a public school district. We're tax exempt. So that expertise really doesn't play well for us. The second partner in this consortium is DRG LLC. They specialize in labor law and labor litigation. Typically, you bring them in if you have labor issues. West Claremont reportedly has a good working relationship with its teachers. Again, we've heard earlier this evening that the teachers have gone without a raise and steps for several years. We thank you again for that. So with those good relations. It would seem a terrible message to send to the teachers in the community to hire a law firm that specializes in intense labor negotiations. The last partner is Cummins and Brown. Ms. Brown is the sole listed partner with school district experience. But if you read her experience, much of it is related to writing policies and procedures, both of which Dr. Klein and I have a great amount of experience. And if you'd like to pay either of us a lawyer's salary to do that, we'd probably gladly volunteer. So that's my analysis of the two different proposals.
And
That's my support for Finney.
I think the other points that are important to make of Mr. Finney's own comments and qualifications and experience, he says that Mr. Finney has extensive experience in public interest litigation, primarily as plaintiff's counsel, enforcing open meetings and public record laws, as well as forcing compliance with the restrictions on the abuse of taxpayer monies through a series of actions spanning more than 20 years. Presently, Mr. Finney is attorney for 5 sets of parents and children in a high-profile special education and child abuse case in a suburban Cincinnati school district. Other than a brief representation of the Springboro Board of Education, Mr. Finney has not represented any additional public school districts in Ohio. And relative to Ms. Brown, she has served as general counsel to community schools and community school sponsors throughout the state of Ohio. I would dare say that community schools are not public school districts. They don't follow the same laws and guidelines that a public district does, and in my opinion, they're not qualified for the needs that we have in this district.
I respect my colleagues in their decision to retain Brickler and Eckler as a district's law firm. However, given the challenges the district has and continues to face, I wanted to explore a law firm that would provide a new, fresh perspective and that would offer practical but creative solutions that may not have been offered before. We need to move this district forward so that the children have the opportunities not currently offered, and I am not sure that maintaining the status quo is the solution we need. Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Banshees?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. Motion carried. Executive session. We need a motion to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering confidential information relative to the specific business strategy. Do we have a motion?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Motion, second. Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Banshees?
Yes.
Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes. Motion carried. Adjournment. We will not be coming back into this room to adjourn, so therefore we will go ahead and say goodnight to everyone. Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, September 23rd, 7 p.m. at the Civic Center.